Hello and welcome to the 2017-2019 training for the book committee. First of all, I'd like to thank you for serving on the committee. Second, this video will have references to both Reading Recovery teacher leaders and at times Reading Recovery teachers. Teacher leaders are free to use this video with their teachers as they're training them on this process. But if there's any questions, please let me know. Third, this video and PowerPoint presentation correspond with the Reading Recovery packet that you were sent in an email, teacher leaders. So everything in this PowerPoint is also included in that packet. So let's get started. As you know, in Reading Recovery, we use leveled books to help children develop a literacy processing system. So they're essential for our work. And the book leveling site, the book site, is essential for teachers to choose books to use with children. However, I do want to note that Reading Recovery teachers are free to use books that are not on the book list, because the books on the book list are limited to only the books that publishers feel that they want to have officially leveled. But I will say that the books on the book list should be your guide for choosing books that aren't on the book list. So for example, Rigby books, many of them, most of them are not on the book list. I've been doing this committee for about 10 years and they have never submitted books to be leveled by our committee, but they are very good books. So I encourage teachers to not just use the levels that Rigby has established on their books, but to compare the books with books that are already on the book list. Because we find on this committee that sometimes the levels are different. There have been times where there have been as much as 2 levels difference between what Rigby has on their book and maybe what a group of people who have used those books find that are appropriate. So the books on the book list are meant to be a guide for teachers to use not only with children, but to use when you're using books or thinking about purchasing books that are not on the book list. So as you know, also we use 20 levels. Level 1 being the most supportive in terms of meaning and structure. Level 20 books representing end of first grade, beginning of second grade, with multiple meanings within the books, levels of storylines that come together at the end, complex sentence structures, and tier 2 and maybe tier 3 words. So the books we are leveling this year will hopefully range from levels 1 to 20. We have an overabundance of books at the lower levels, so we've been encouraging publishers to send us books above level 8 all the way to 20 so that we can expand our choices on the book list for those levels. Teacher leaders are going to be asked to have teachers sign a statement saying they are not associated with a book company. Associated means maybe on the payroll, in a position with a book company to choose books or to or in any facet where their role might conflict with what we do in this committee. This is not meant to keep teachers from publishing books with companies like Hambury Press. This is strictly for teachers who are also working with a book company and their work on this committee might conflict with what you're doing for them. So teacher leaders, I'll send you these forms And if you could hold on to them, and if in the future I need to see them, I will be contacting you about that. So here's our timeline for this project. As you can see, and again, this timeline is in the packet that hopefully the teacher leaders have shared with the teachers. And in August and September, we have asked publishers to send copies of the books they would like officially leveled. The trainers met in September. We looked at all copies of the books that publishers had submitted and made a yes-no decision about the books. Yes, the book would be field tested, or no, the book was not appropriate for reading recovery, meaning not appropriate, incorrect sentence structures. We got some books that had vocabulary words in the text and the meaning was in like a speech bubble right within the text. It's amazing the different things that publishers try to do. So the books that you will be receiving are books that the trainers have said, yes, they are appropriate. So every book that you have and will be field testing have been found to be appropriate, and they should move through the system and be included in the book list. You will not see any books that we feel should not be field tested, so all books should go ahead and be involved in the process, work with children, and an established level be developed. We are now in January. Teacher leaders have volunteered to serve on this committee and are recruiting teachers to serve on the committee. So I thank you both for that. I'm getting this video ready, so it should be sent to the teacher leaders by the end of this week, January 20th. And the books will be shipped out on Monday, the 24th. So the books should arrive to the teacher leaders by the end of next week. Once teacher leaders get the books, we're asking them to meet with their teachers. We will go over that process in a minute and establish a target level. And then I will need those levels. I just see there's a spelling error on there. By February 20th, 2018. Not a spelling error, a date error. So by February 20th, I hope that teacher leaders will have met with teachers, looked at their books, and said, yes, I think this is a level 10. And then they submit those levels on a link on SurveyMonkey, which they will receive. Then the next day, I will look at all the target levels established by the 25 teachers leader sites across the U.S. Hopefully everybody would agree on a level. I get 25 people that say, oh, this should be a level 4. So then I will send out those levels to all the teacher leaders to distribute. With that target level, field testing will begin, and we will talk about that in a minute. So teachers will be using these books with children, using that target level. And then following Christmas in 2018 and into January 2019, teachers will complete a form, give it to their teacher leaders, and say, oh, this is the level I found. It matched the target level. It doesn't. Oh my gosh, it doesn't. They will send those to me. I will compile all those, do some mathematical work for the ones where the levels are very different, and then the books go into the book committee. So let's break down this process a little bit and we'll move forward. So I would suggest teacher leaders that the first thing you do is to gather books from your book box, books that are already on the book list, and have a review of those with the teachers who are going to be establishing the target levels. Now, this could be a professional development session where books are distributed among a group and they discuss what makes a book a level 8, what makes a book a level 9. And teachers involved in this process don't necessarily have to be the ones that are field testing. You might have a site with 10 teachers and only 5 want to engage in the field testing. I would have all reading recovery teachers at my site engage in this process. It's a learning process. It's an understanding of the levels and what makes books on the different levels. Now it says the guide provided has some characteristics. The ones in the guide are very broad. I think teachers should be able to develop more specific characteristics of each level of book than what's in the guide. So I think that would be in the text, in the process. The other thing I do is I cover up all the levels on the back of the book that the publisher has stated. I just take a label and just cover it up so that that doesn't influence the teachers when they're considering a target level. And then I would ask the teachers to look at the books that are going to be field testing, discuss the characteristics, comparing it to the characteristics from the books that they've looked at earlier from the book leveling committee or their book box. So they read the text, discuss the characteristics without thinking about a level. And I will say the Canadian teacher leaders have in the past told me what they've done is actually read the text without looking at the pictures. And it really gives us a much different look at the book and understanding about the structure of the book. So consider doing that. Reading the text without looking at the pictures, discuss the characteristics without considering a level. And like I said, compare it to existing books on the list or from your book boxes. So if 2 teachers are looking at a book, they would talk about, okay, I think it's a level 5, I think it's a level 6, we got to make a decision. They make a decision. I tend to give out sticky notes to everybody. They write a target level on the sticky note, put it on the book, and hand it back to the teacher leader. I also give them a copy of the database so that they can record their tentative level, their target level on the database. And then the teacher leader puts together the target levels and submits them online to a link that I will provide to them. So that's the process for establishing the target level. And the target level, again, is the level that we will be using to field test with children. It may change after we work with children, but we need a starting point to know where to start working with children on this book. And the reason I love this process is because it uses your expertise, your knowledge in terms of making decisions about levels. So in this process, the teachers are the experts. And you as reading recovery trained teachers know the difference between a 4 and a 5, a 7 and an 8. It's not a computer program. It's all based on your knowledge. So now we have the target levels. They're sent to me. I compile all that information, and For every book, we come up with a target tentative level. I send those levels out to all the teacher leaders, who in turn send those levels to the teachers who will be actually using this books with children at the level that the target level that we decided upon. We ask that every book be field tested with at least one child, with 2 if possible. We field test during lessons. And again, more in a minute. And we only field test with Reading Recovery teachers and Reading Recovery students. This is a Reading Recovery book list, so only Reading Recovery students and teachers are part of this process. So, how do we field test? So kind of think of a sandwich with the new book, the book with the target level, being used with a child between 2 books that you know are already good books for that level. So we're going to have an example in a minute. But the first step on Monday is to introduce a book from the current book list or from your book box. On Tuesday, as you know, we take a running record on the book we introduced on Monday. But then the new book on Tuesday is going to be a field testing book that we have set a target level at the same level as the running record book. On Wednesday, the field testing book is given a running record. The child reads it, you take a running record, and then we introduce a new book from your book box on the same level. So when you're field testing a book, remember what I said about the sandwich. A book from your book box is the new book on Monday. Field testing book is the new book on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, we're going to test our hypothesis with a book at the same level from your book box. Now that only occurs if all 3 come out at the exact same level. So let's go on with some examples of things that could happen in this process. As you know, on Thursday, you would take a running record on the new book from Wednesday. There is a field testing form that is in the last page of your packet. That needs to be completed for every book that you are field testing. So, let's talk about some examples of what might happen while you're field testing. Remember we said the first day, maybe Monday, you've looked at your, let me start again. You have a field testing book called Jimmy's New Hat. So you pull that out of your book box and you say, I'm going to field test this book. But before I do, I need to make sure that my child can read a level 4 book. So on Monday, you would introduce Dan the Flying Man to the child, which we know is a level 4 book. He earns 93% on that book on the next day. So you know the child is reading on a level 4. So then on Tuesday, you would introduce Jimmy's New Hat, which is a book we're going to field test. You're going to take a running record the next day. It comes out 93%. Yay, we're pretty sure that that book should be a level 4. We're pretty sure that that book will be appropriate for a child reading on level 4. But to make sure, to test our hypothesis, we're going to introduce the bumper cars, another level 4 book, the following day, so that we know that number 1, the child is reading a level 4 that is appropriate level for them, and that the new book, Jimmy's New Hat, that's being field tested is at an appropriate target level. So I wish this for you, for everybody, for every book. I wish this happens for every book. So on the data sheet that we talked about earlier, this is the information you would include on that. At the top of the data sheet, it has the name of the book you're going to field test. You would write Jimmy's New Hat. And then it has a table much like this for you to include the name, accuracy rate, level of the books that you used around this book to test the target level. Let's hope that happens. I'm hoping. And another thing I should mention, that we are including an accuracy rate of 90 to 97% within this scenario. So if a child read Dan the Flying Man at 97, Jimmy's New Hat was 96, Bumper Cars 97, we still consider those good percentages to field test this book. But on the other hand, this might happen. What if the accuracy rate is above 97% for the book that you are field testing, Jimmy's New Hat? Then we have a problem. Then we kind of know the target level has not been set appropriately. So follow along with this scenario. Child read Dan the Flying Man, level 4, came out at 93%. Perfect, within our 90 to 97%. But then the child's running record on Jimmy's New Hat was 99%. Oh my gosh, level 4 wasn't good for that book. Level 4 was too high for that book. This child read this book at 99%. So as you see at the top of the page, we now have to field test that book, Jimmy's New Hat, with a child who's reading on level 3. So let me say that one again. This took me a while to get my head around. If a book is read at level 4 and it's too easy for that child, then children reading on a level 3 would find that book at an instructional level. So then we have to test this book at a lower level, where the child's processing would be challenged by a book reading by this book. And while it says on here you have to do a third book, you really don't have to, because we already know by the 99% that the book is much too easy for a child reading at level 4. So you don't really need to do that third book. However, if you look at the data sheet asks you for the information on the book. Even though we decided we have to test it again, your data sheet has room for 2 testings of the same book. So every data sheet should be for a book, not for each time that you engage in field testing it. So this data sheet for Jimmy's New Hat would have this data here from Dan the Flying Man, Jimmy's New Hat, but then again, you would have data when this book was read with a child reading at level 3. So that's the one scenario that can happen. Remember, we had the first scenario, everything fell within the 90 to 97. Now this one, it's too easy for a child reading at level 4. Now, what about if it's too hard for a child reading at level 4? So again, think about the child, not about the book. So in this case, Jimmy's New Hat, the accuracy was 72% for a child reading at level 4. It's too hard for a child reading at level 4. So then we have to move it and work with it with a child at a higher level. Maybe 6, probably go to 5, but you might even have to go to level 6 if this came out this low. So it's about the child not being able to read this book. A child who we're seeing is reading at a level 4. This book is too hard for that child. So it's got to be put at a higher level. So a child with a higher level of processing can read it at the instructional level. Here is another way to look at it. Running record on the left-hand side of text at target level. If it's above 97%, the target level, the field testing book, then you have to read it at a lower level with a different student. Again, I wish everything happened straight across, left to right, between 90 and 97%. If you have another child reading at that level, you might do it with another child, but you don't have to. The bottom scenario, if the book was under 90%, you must read it with a child at a higher level. So, after you field test the book, you enter. Now we have a recommended level. And teacher leaders, please hold all those forms until the end of 2018. Please don't send them to me as they happen. There will be a time that will be sent to you as in terms of when to send me the data sheets. Please organize the data sheets by title. You can mail them to me or you can email them to me. A lot of teacher leaders are scanning them to me and sending them to me through email. That's fine too. And again, I see a year date on here. We want the data entered on the SurveyMonkey link by January 15th, 2019, not 18. And please email me with questions. So the forms, this is for teacher leaders. Once teachers give you the forms, organized by title. So there are a couple hundred books. Some teacher leaders are getting half of that number. Whatever books you get, you will need to organize those data sheets by the title and send them to me or scan and email them to me. And again, I want to thank you for your help. And again, your help is keeping the books that you field test. And I will say we have a lot of good books this year. If you decide to send hard copies of the books, you can send them to me at this address. But teacher leaders, I have a few hints for you. Other teacher leaders in the past have shared these with me, and I think they're great hints. So, like I said earlier, think about having a professional development session where you engage all teachers in understanding or identifying characteristics of books at each of the 20 levels. I think it's tricky above level 15 or 16, but we do have some books at those levels, so we really need to be thinking about that. After you get the tentative levels or the target levels, a lot of teacher leaders, instead of passing out all the books to the teachers, let's say you're picking up new kids in February and the lowest kids you have are level 4 and 5, those books that are targeted 4 and 5 are the only ones you give out to teachers. So every month as you meet with teachers, you give them books that are books that they would be working with their children. In the old days, teacher leaders would give teachers all the books that they established a target level. but then they seem to get lost and they don't get field tested. So consider doing that, just dispersing the books with teachers at levels that they're presently working on. And last, this is the best hint I ever got. So this is what I do. I work with two groups of teachers that once you disperse the books to the teachers, they have a piece of neon paper, a strip or some type of paper that they put in the book, and then the teachers put those books in their book box. And so when they go to pick the next book for the child, they see the books with this neon stripe or paper and know they have to field test that. So those are some hints that I've gotten from teacher leaders, and I think they're really helpful as we engage in this process year after year.